friends. Welcome back to Chew Sip Repeat. Today, I'm happy to be sitting next to one of my most favorite humans on the planet. She's an extremely talented chef that I have been a huge fan of for many years. The only time I've been slightly upset with her is when she took a hiatus from cooking and decided to be a bartender. She has worked as a line cook and an executive chef at some of Tulsa's staples. Her cooking career has landed her on multiple cooking shows and taken her all over the United States and even Canada. In her most recent culinary adventure, she has founded and is the executive director of a nonprofit here in Tulsa. Welcome, Chef Nico.
Hello.
Hi. So when did we meet? I think.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like 2008, 9.
I thought it was more like, I guess 2008 because I was at Lola's at the Bowery.
Yes. Yes.
I had left the Petroleum Club to go be the sous chef at Lola's.
Yes.
And that was at the same time that like I had been there maybe a few months, and that was when Sochet was closing.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it must have been 2009 then.
Was it 2009?
Yes, because...
Did Sochet close in 2009? Maybe I was there in 2008. I know I met you guys when Sochet was closing.
Yes, and I couldn't... Yeah, when Sochet closed, I was at Arnie's.
Okay.
So, and I started there, I think, in 2009. So it had to have been.
It was.
Yeah. Well, let's back up a little bit. I have some questions that I want to ask you, not because I don't know the answers to them, but because I want people to understand a bit more about your history and know who you are and where you've come from and just get to know you a little bit better. So is Tulsa your hometown?
It is not originally. I guess I say it is now because I've been here since 2006. But I was born in Bakersfield, California.
Okay.
And we moved around quite a bit. So, I, lived in Bakersfield for a number of years, moved to Northern California for like elementary school years, and then went to middle school and high school in like Phoenix, Scottsdale, Arizona area.
And it was because your dad is in oil, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We kind of like commiserated about that. It's like being an oil brat versus being an army brat. Like,
right.
We just... Instead of bases, we got transferred to refinery cities. So.
Right. And so when did you move to Tulsa?
So I moved to Tulsa. I moved to Oklahoma originally in 2003.
To Bartlesville.
To Bartlesville, which is where my parents live still. And then, I was living in Bartlesville, had met like a really great group of friends, and was doing a lot of driving back and forth to Tulsa from Bartlesville because, Bartlesville, it's a little better nowadays, but it's still,
it's grown.
It runs its charm out, and you have to come to the big city of Tulsa for all the excitement. And so it was funny to listen to you and Tack talk and like mention the Continental, because that was one of the big places that I would be driving to like twice a week, because Tuesdays and Thursdays were jazz jam. And I was really good friends with guys from this band, The Hamilton, that started in Bartlesville, that is now members of Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey and like Holmesy here and there. And like, so I was traveling with all those folks to Tulsa for jazz nights, and then, inadvertently being exposed to like the very little start of cocktail culture in Tulsa.
Right. Yeah.
With Tony and
Tony Collins. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And so, I definitely wasn't in any position to have any kind of like enlightenment as far as that went, because I was like sneaking in the back door and trying to get the band to go get free beers so that I could have the free beers. And then like praying that my car made it back to Bartlesville in the middle of the night, which one of the times it did not.
Oh my gosh.
So like it was a tumultuous time, but I absolutely loved the Continental. And that was kind of what drew me to Tulsa, was like, this is really dumb that I'm driving back and forth every day. Why don't I just get a job here?
Right.
And I eventually like lost my job in Bartlesville and decided, well, if I'm going to get another job, I might as well just
get it in Tulsa.
make the start in Tulsa.
So was the petroleum club then your first industry job?
No.
Okay, where was your first industry job?
So, I mean, industry job, I started when I was 17 in front of the house.
Okay.
As a hostess. And my first job was supposed to be at like a New Orleans themed, I forget the name of it, but it was like a New Orleans themed chain restaurant, kind of like Bourbon Street or something like that. But this was in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I had a friend that worked as a hostess there and was always like having just such a great time and going out and drinking with all the older, restaurant people and friends that she was making friends with. And it just seemed very exciting and fun, and a lot more fun than my like kennel assistant job, which was very like, that was what I was doing in high school. Was I worked at a veterinary hospital, and it was actually a very solid career path that probably would have led me to a very like stable and reliable source of income.
9 to
but
5.
of course I didn't want that. I wanted like some kind of excitement and danger. And so
the lure of the industry.
Got a job as a hostess with my friend, and then the restaurant immediately shut down before I could even start work.
Oh my God.
So I was like, this should have been like a major red flag that maybe the restaurant industry is not the most like reliable source of income. But I immediately got another job at another restaurant, and it was a place called Mezcal.
Oh, yes.
Which I think was a place like really ahead of its time. It was like authentic Oaxacan cuisine, a whole mezcal menu.
And this was what, like 2000 and...
That was 2002?
Yeah. So yeah, I would say that was pretty ahead of its time.
Yeah,
for sure.
It definitely was. And it was pretty popular. It didn't, last. It's not there anymore, but it was there for a while, and I really loved it. I started as a hostess and worked my way up to like bar backing, and my goal had been to be a bartender. And I kind of just was chasing money at that point, like that's when you're in your early, I was in my teens. So I was like, the second I turned 18, I was able to bar back, because you had to be 18 to serve alcohol in Phoenix. And so, yeah, I like worked my way to different jobs, just hearing like, oh, they're making, so-and-so money per night at the Vine in Tempe. And so I'd quit one job and like go be a server somewhere else.
On the hunt for the money.
Just always chasing it. And so I worked front of the house for the longest time until...
How did you make the transition into the back of the house where you shine so well?
It's funny because my mom was always the one, like, especially when I moved, I fell on some hard times and needed to move back in with my parents to like save up some money. That's like the story of how I ended up in Oklahoma. Was they had gotten transferred when I was in high school. And it was my senior year, and they were moving to Oklahoma, and I was like already enrolled at Arizona State. I had a job. I had my own apartment. I was like, bye. Like, I'm not going to Oklahoma. That's lame. But then, I ended up being like 19 years old and can't pay my bills and lost my job. And it was a really bad market, and like no one would hire me. And so I ended up supposed to be coming to Bartlesville to live for 3 months and save up some money, and then move back home to the Valley. And once I got here, I just, I didn't want to leave. I met really wonderful people, and I got, kind of settled back in and liked being around my family and having that support system. And so I just stayed. And, there's so much more to that, but job wise, like, I just spent many years, like all throughout my 20s, of like resisting the industry, like I would work, all the way up to like being a restaurant manager, being the floor manager, or, whatever it was, shift lead, at front of the house, or working as a barista and making salads at like coffee shops and stuff like that in Bartlesville. And, the money was always just really unreliable, working for tips, very stressful,
Yeah.
especially when you are very irresponsible. And so eventually, my mom was always whispering like, you should go to culinary school. You should do, you've always been a good cook and you love to cook. And it would be like a steadier, like actual career path rather than,
Right.
the instability. And I was just constantly like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. But I did, I always really enjoyed being in the kitchen. Like that was where
Right.
all the dirty jokes were. That was where everybody was having the most fun. That was where you could be loud and crass. And, that was like the pirate ship. Like that's, and then you have to go out in the front and just be all nice. And then like you get to come into the back and be like, you know?
Yes.
So the back was always like, had that draw for me. And when I moved to Tulsa in 2006, I initially worked at P.F. Chang's, which was its own kind of adventure. And then, a bunch of other stuff, like I worked at Doubletree at the front desk, and I worked like the first shift where I had to be there at like 6:30 in the morning. I didn't have a car, so I took the Tulsa like city bus to Doubletree.
There are worse ways of getting there. So.
But it really didn't work very often. And so, yeah, it was terrible. And I was not good at that. So I finally kind of broke down and was like, okay, well, I've made salads and stuff at the coffee shops, and I've, been in restaurants long enough. I'm pretty sure I could cook. It doesn't look that hard.
Yeah.
So I kind of like weaseled my way into a job at Petroleum Club. And that was 2000.
So your first step into the kitchen was Petroleum Club. And then you were hired
that was
as
my first,
the sous chef at Lola's.
Yeah.
Next.
That was insane.
It
was a big jump.
Yeah.
Like Petroleum Club really was like my boot camp, because that was my first real kitchen job where there was like the hierarchy of chefs. There was, there was a sous chef, there was an executive chef, there were line cooks that were in charge of certain stations. And so I kind of really learned that, that kind of almost, the military brigade system that kitchens were run under. And so I started out as like the garde manger, working the pantry station, basically making salads, plating desserts. And I think the chefs could see that like I did have creativity, like there
was potential there.
There was potential. And, I picked up on things quickly, and, I would get to like make whatever kind of pasta salad I wanted for like the big buffets that we would do at Petroleum Club. And I would like just go wild with it. And they could see that like it was something that I was picking up quickly. And so I just kind of rose in the ranks at that kitchen very rapidly. Like, the turnover in a professional kitchen is often
very high.
Very high. So, or it would be like, one guy would just like get locked up over the weekend, and like there's no one to work the grill. And I'll be like, well, I've been standing next to the grill for 4 months. I'll do it.
Right.
And yeah, I just kind of like
grill is a hard station. That is intimidating.
It's always been my favorite. Like I like to saute and everything, but grill has always been my favorite.
Fast forward, probably an indication of your love for open fire cooking.
Definitely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there was something about like putting like perfect little X's on a steak, like the rotation, and then just like I don't know. I just grilling's
your jam.
Grilling is my jam. That's my favorite. I miss grilling on a regular basis, you know, like that line station was always my favorite. But yeah, then, that like youthful ambition thing where,
I can conquer the world.
Yeah. And a friend of mine, Jacob Ide, was running the kitchen at Lola's as the head chef under, Lola herself.
Right.
And he needed a sous chef, and we knew each other, I think, really from like the music scene in Tulsa.
Oh yeah, Jacob's always been a big
just going to shows. And
so just so people know, what is Lola's? What was Lola's?
Lola's, gosh, it kind of had like a Spanish tapas vibe, but it was very much Lola's own vision, because
Right.
there was also like this Southwestern, like Santa Fe influence mixed in from her background. And, you know, she had this like Dia de los Muertos vibe
Yes, very
that
much.
infused everything there.
Didn't
And
she
so
have a what do they call those cars?
she drove a hearse.
Yes.
Yeah, she drove a hearse with like the Day of the Dead Katrina on the back of it.
Right.
And yeah, and it was very much my aesthetic. Like Lola
absolutely.
and I got along like gangbusters. She actually was originally from Bartlesville and like used to work at the funeral home there. And so she just had like this really artistic, macabre, gothic, but then with like Southwestern and Spanish food vibes. That I
Right.
was like, well, this is my home. This
Right.
is exactly
It
like
was.
I really loved the food that I got to experiment with there.
Right. And just so people are aware, because obviously it is no longer
Mhm.
around, but the location of this is where the tavern is currently.
Yes.
Yeah.
So originally not even originally, it's been, you know, it's like a historic building. So it's been so many different things,
Right.
you know, it is haunted as fuck. And
Really?
oh yes. And so it was the Bowery, which was like a nightclub.
Yes, I do
And so
remember
then it
hearing
became
about
Lola's at the Bowery.
that.
And there was a stage, like that's where I first got introduced to like Branjay, and Charlie Red would play there.
Oh yes, I do
Yeah.
remember
And
that.
oh my gosh, so many Tulsa musicians that are still playing and incredible today. But like there were, you know, there was a lot of jazz and, you know, hip hop and R&B stuff going on there. Again, just really ahead of its time, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
We could go on and on about
I know.
Lola's and or the Continental, which by the way was a craft cocktail bar before craft cocktail bars were a thing here in Tulsa.
Yeah.
And it was on this side of McNelly's downtown.
Where
And it
it
was
was
a
like
tiny little-
sidebars there.
Yes,
now, right?
it was a tiny little place, and it had like these crescent booths, and it was just,
It was all like blue velvet and
Yeah,
blue lights.
it was
and it was
just-
sexy.
oh, it was
I
dope.
loved that place.
Yes.
I felt like the coolest when I was hanging out there. And this is, believe me, I was not.
I doubt it. I've
No,
always
it was
been
not.
super cool.
It was not cool.
So I'm interested in hearing more about the behind the scenes of all your TV adventures.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Where was the first TV show that you went on?
So I guess the first one,
And Channel 8 and Channel 6 and things like that don't count. They don't make the cut.
no.
Right.
And actually I did like Food Network before I think I was even ever on local news, which
That's
is weird.
hilarious. That is so funny.
But it was, you know, I'd been at Lucky's for a while, and
Mhm.
I left Lucky's in 2014 to open Mixco with
Yes.
Ryan Stack and Jared Jordan, which are, you know, just the old school homies. That's like the whole little
Mhm.
crew of industry people that
Right.
we like all got to come up with. And so they, you know, wanted to open this craft cocktail mixology type of bar.
Right.
And I, you know, had been just feeling the burnout a while at Lucky's. You know, the management side of things really makes it difficult to stay like creative and,
Yeah,
and,
for
and
sure.
inspired and passionate. And so I was like, I just really need a change. And they had approached me about just consulting or basically doing some cheese and charcuterie boards for the bar.
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And also like, what else do you want me to do? Because I kind of really want to try something else. And I, you know, going back to like when I was 18, being a bar back, I like always really wanted to explore bartending.
Well, I just want to go on the record and say it's not that you were a bad bartender by any means as to why I was mad at you, because you were an excellent bartender.
Well,
However, I just really missed you cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It did. It was really, I really needed that like hiatus. And
Sure.
it was really good for me to like miss it, you know?
Yeah.
And to be inspired by like different flavors and like all of my cocktails started to like taste like they all started to become very savory. And, I was like, why don't you just make some soup, girl? Like, stop making this like roasted garlic, like chicken broth, Manhattan, like martini. That was a real thing.
I bet you it was delicious.
It was good. Matt Land and I made that up. It was called oh my gosh, what was it? The Santa Carla Sunrise. Because you're like Lost Boys.
Yeah.
It's set in Santa Carla, fictional Cherokee, fictional California town, and infested with vampires. And so it was like a roasted garlic martini.
Right.
I thought it was delicious. It's
get
definitely not something that you would I don't know. I don't even know how I got talking about that, but
I infused vodka with pepperoni one time. And the only thing it was remotely good for was a Bloody Mary.
Oh, obviously.
That was it.
Like,
it sat on my shelf for forever because I don't particularly care for Bloody Mary. So it just
pepperoni. It was vodka.
Yeah, it was nice. It wasn't my brightest idea.
I have seen that in some once the craft cocktail boom started and like there'd be like sports bars like sticking Slim Jims in their bottles of McCormick's and be like, it's infused. Stop. That's when craft cocktails have jumped the shark. It's over.
Cured meats have no business being in any kind of cocktail.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to your actual question. I was newly at Mixco and we hadn't opened any kind of kitchen there or anything yet. I was still, just doing the bartending thing and focusing on that. But I got an email from Food Network about doing guys' grocery games.
Yes.
Which was, oh man, I had an existential crisis, the first of many, about whether or not I should do that show. But then I was like, what? That's like a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah,
even though, everyone has relentlessly given me shit about my personal relationship with Guy Fieri.
It was fun.
It was fun. It was a wonderful experience. And yeah, that was kind of my first foray into the world of televised cooking.
My mother called me and was like, Christina? And I was like, yes. She's like, would Nico happen to be on the TV right now? And I was like, are you watching Guy Fieri? And she goes, yes. I said, that would be her.
It's the Halloween episode. So they rerun it.
Which is perfect.
I know, it was kind of perfect. And they rerun it every year around Halloween.
Hilarious.
And so then it's just a whole new crop of this year will be 10 years since that.
Oh my gosh, it was that long ago.
Yeah. And it comes back. It just won't go away.
It's like a ghost that keeps haunting.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, out of all of the TV appearances you have made, what has been your favorite?
One of the most recent ones, I'll say of the ones that have aired, because there are some things that haven't aired yet.
Oh, I'm very excited.
That are coming up that are going to be really cool, but really, really cool. But of the ones that are out, I think Searching for Soul Food was probably my favorite. That one's on Hulu. And
I'm embarrassed to say that I don't know if I've seen this one.
Oh my God.
I know.
Tina.
I know. Searching for Soul Food. I don't think I've seen it. I thought the last one you were on was the Chefs vs. Wild, which you totally got robbed on, and I don't believe any of it. So,
we can definitely talk about Chefs vs. Wild because that was an insane experience.
It seemed very challenging.
It was so hard. But the chefs are
Searching for Soul Food.
Searching for Soul Food is the chef Elisa Reynolds from LA. She has a soul food restaurant in LA. It's kind of like healthier versions of soul food.
Okay.
And she got this show where she travels all over the world in search of visiting all these different communities and finding out what their version of soul food is. And just documenting that and
so cool.
cooking with people and just learning about their connections with food. Awesome concept. And
yes, very much so.
That came about, I think that was I want to say the spring of 2022 that we filmed that.
I know you've told me about it, but I didn't know that it was out yet. I think the last time we spoke, you said it hadn't been released yet, but you were excited about it. And I didn't know that it was out yet.
I think it came out just this past year.
Okay.
So, and it's definitely still up there. I think we're the second episode, but it was one of, those that, I've done a lot of this like kind of documentary stuff. And, there's always a risk, especially when you're like representing the Native community, and
Right.
there's a lot of misinformation or preconceived notions that people have, or a story that they don't know that they're already trying to tell, even though, like it's so difficult. And I do, I'm compassionate toward filmmakers that are really trying to tell, and, allow people to tell their own story. But
Sure.
a lot of times it just doesn't happen that way.
Ah.
And so I've had those experiences both in
Mhm.
print and in, video media and stuff, where it's like, man, I thought I said all the right words and this still isn't coming off right,
Right.
But Searching for Soul Food, like they were so intentional, and the way that our story was presented, it was myself and two former board members of Burning Cedar Sovereign Wellness, and their families. And we were all out on Osage land in the springtime, and we were gathering wild onions and preparing this wild onion dinner, which is like a springtime,
Mhm.
ritual that we have, that where we
Sure.
celebrate these
Many
springtime.
tribes do.
Yeah,
They? Mhm.
lots and lots of tribes in Oklahoma, and southeastern tribes especially. But yeah, it was just a very meaningful meal to be able to present. And Elisa, like as the host, did a great job of like just allowing us to speak and tell our story without putting any kind of like their own context on it that would
Right.
take away from what we were trying to express. And so, man, I love the way that show
Okay.
turned
Well,
out.
I'm watching it tonight.
Watch that one.
Well, the girls are staying the night at their grandmother's, and Trey and I had discussed going out, but maybe we don't. And we just stay in and watch that. So
It's a good one.
I'm going to watch it for
Yeah.
sure. Okay. And so in addition to cooking, landing you on TV shows, I don't want to say more recently, because it's been a couple of years or a year plus has passed, but you were also the private chef to Leo while he was filming Killers of the Flower Moon here
Yes.
in Oklahoma as well. So how was that? What was that like?
That was like the spring and summer of 2021.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, almost a couple of years,
Yeah, it was
or almost 3 years. Yeah.
it almost seems like this like weird dream state that didn't really happen, because it was so like it was just this weird isolated moment of my life that like there was really no interaction with anything else, so it's very
Yeah, because of
immersive.
COVID.
Yeah. So we were coming right out of like full on lockdown. And, I had lost my job at Duet and was on unemployment, and just kind of like in general freaking out about what I was going to do. And had decided like, okay, I'm not going to get, I'm not just going to get another kitchen job or another restaurant job. I don't want to open my own place, because that would be the worst possible time to do that.
Yeah.
Not an option.
And in the perfect situations, it's very hard. So
Yeah. So that was just not even on the table at all, even though I had already decided that wasn't something I wanted to pursue anymore. And so I was just like, well, I'll give just private catering a go and just start, Burning Cedar Indigenous Foods as a catering company and see how it goes. And before, it was like literally the day my unemployment was running out and nothing was back on, I was doing
Right.
like virtual cooking workshops and stuff, but
sure.
no one was, having parties. So the catering business was not going to like
Sustain
fly.
you.
Yeah, no. And so I was like, well, what are we going to do for money right now when this is the last check we're going to get? And like that day I got a DM from another chef who ended up being Scorsese's chef, saying, hey, what are you doing? Are you doing anything right now? Do you need, would you be open to,
Wow.
this random, like committing to a 6-month long contract.
Like,
And I was like,
yes.
actually, did Jesus send you? Because yes, I would. Like, I was just really wondering how I was going to pay my rent. So that like came at the perfect possible time. So, yeah, I just kind of got thrown into that world of like Hollywood descended in Oklahoma and like set up its own little universe that it was like, I know I'm in Tulsa and I'm like driving around Oklahoma, but I feel like my existence is like completely separate from normal life. It was not
Right.
normal for, 6 full months, and then it was just over.
That's so crazy.
And it was like they all get on planes and they all fly away, and you're just sitting there like, did that just happen? What was the last 6 months?
Was
just
I
like?
literally just feeding
Yeah,
like-
it was wild.
Romeo?
I know. Romeo.
Like,
Yeah, and he was very like down to earth, like that, it's as much as you can be for a person that's been like super famous since they were 13.
oh yeah. I mean,
So like, but I'll tell people like he wasn't by any means like normal,
right.
but he wasn't an asshole.
Right. Right.
I was very pleasantly surprised that I kind of thought it would be a situation where I would like make the plates and I would leave them on whatever table and I would like go hide,
Yeah,
and let
right.
them eat and then be like, can I take your plate? Okay. But it was not like that at all. He like came home from a day of shooting and he would sit down at the kitchen, like at the, kitchen island and be like, what's for dinner? Oh my God, that sounds great. What's going in there? What are you doing?
Oh wow.
Like, yeah, just like kind of chatted up and asked me for recommendations on where to go and what to do. And he had family come in, his entire family came and stayed multiple times, and his girlfriend's family as well. So we would have like, these full family dinners where like, I'm randomly in a family photo with like his former girlfriend and like all of her family and all of his family.
That's crazy.
It's really weird.
What
Yeah.
an interesting experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Never in a million years did I imagine that like my career would end up there.
That's
And it just kind of really doesn't seem very real because it was like a very intensive, it was like another boot camp because it was like there was a very strict diet that he had to stick to because he was trying to cut weight for the role.
oh, okay.
He, had gained a little COVID weight, as did we all. And
Sure.
the character of Ernest was really kind of supposed to be more like of this like kind of wiry, wily, Oklahoma ranch hand type of guy.
Right.
And Leo was not in that particular shape at that time. So like I had him on a really restricted calorie diet, and it was all like low inflammation foods. There was no red meat, no gluten, no sugar, no dairy.
Oh wow. Chicken breast and
so-
broccoli.
Yeah, it was super, and actually not even broccoli. Like there was like the whole, like all the cabbagey type of vegetables, like no Brussels sprouts, no cabbage.
Oh, okay.
But kale was okay, but
Huh.
Brussels sprouts weren't. It was a very odd diet.
Is
It
it
was
just because of the like too heavy in fiber or something? I don't know.
have no clue.
Very interesting.
It was like formulated by a nutritionist in LA that he had seen. And so he had like blood work done and had this like this diet plan put together based on his, all of his levels.
Right.
And so I had this like guideline of red light, yellow light, green light foods, where it was like, green light, he can eat as much as he wants of these. Yellow light, occasional in
Like
moderation.
twice a week.
Yeah. And then like red light was absolutely never.
Right.
And so it was really, really challenging. Like it pushed me. And of course, so you have these limitations of what you can cook. And all of his favorite foods are the opposite of all the things that he's supposed to be eating. He really wants like gravies and sauces and meat and potatoes. He was like
Right.
a red meat and potato kind of guy. With,
Right.
like extra like blue cheese sauce all over it. And then I'm
Oh.
like, can't give you any of that. how's fish again? And so I really did. It was really good for me creatively because like I didn't feed him the same meal twice in like 6 months. I
Oh,
made him
wow.
something. There were a couple that I repeated because he liked them so much, but for the most part, I just tried all new things every single day. Was like coming up with something new and lots of research, and it really helped me like um doing all that research in like what I do now, which is really focused on wellness and healing through food,
Right.
like learning about all of like these inflammatory foods and all of the different ways that you can um heal your body with
With
food.
food. Yes.
Was it like a lot of that real deep research started during that period because I had nothing to do but like figure out
That's awesome.
what to feed Leo for dinner,
Right.
and how to make it really delicious but still
Mindful and healthy.
yeah. And like, I didn't want, there was never any like preservatives. Everything had to be like made completely from scratch and no prepackaged anything. It was all,
Right.
very much the highest possible quality.
Well, fast forwarding a little bit, since we're talking about Burning Cedar and what you're doing now, what tell us a little bit more about Burning Cedar and its like goal/mission? Like why is it in existence? Why did you feel the need to bring it to your community?
So Burning Cedar Sovereign Wellness is an intertribal community wellness center.
Okay.
So intertribal meaning this is a place for people from all different tribes. It's
Okay.
not affiliated with any one tribe. I'm Cherokee, but all of the people that come and gather here and that are a part of this place are from all these different nations and bring all their different respective, culture and knowledge and history to this place where we can all share it. And the idea is that this is a gathering place where people can access those traditional ways of eating and traditional wellness practices that we've been removed from through colonization. We have all, to some degree, some more than others, but we've all lost a connection to our food sources. And our traditional food systems were disrupted due to colonization and removal, and being removed from our ancestral lands. And then for a lot of us living in the city, it is an even further removal because now we're in this urban space and we don't have access to land. And we don't necessarily have the ways of healing that we might in rural areas where there's a lot more opportunities to go for these foraging hikes and walks and, observe the changing seasons and be able to eat and provide your own food in a sustainable way. Like that, there's a barrier to that here in the urban area. And so that is the void that we're trying to fill with this space, is to take all of that knowledge and all of that reconnection that's happening at the rural centers of our tribes and then have a hub for it in the city where we can be this model of like urban sustainability and reconnection to our traditional foods and our traditional wellness practices, which, that could be anything from like plant medicine to just like crafts and storytelling.
Yeah.
And all of those things are healing in ways that like we don't think about wellness nowadays, because in modern society and like Western medicine, it's all about like pharmaceuticals and, how are we managing these symptoms that we all have? But indigenous knowledge tells us that there are deeper roots to the issues that we're having. And yes, a huge part of it is diet. A huge part of it is our lifestyle. We're a lot more sedentary these days. We're not out there like hunting and foraging and cultivating the land. So of course we're not like expending 5,000 calories a day doing that. That's a huge difference from the way our ancestors lived. But beyond that, we're disconnected from each other. We're disconnected from our songs and our dances and our stories. And the multiple generations that used to coexist and share knowledge and share insights. And, the young ones keep us young and the old ones teach us everything that they have accumulated all that knowledge over their lifetime.
Sure.
And our ancestors lived with all of those people together. And nowadays we don't necessarily have that as much. And
Right.
so all of those things are healing.
Mind, body, and soul. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we kind of adhere to this this medicine wheel concept that is not specifically like a Cherokee or Southeastern like tradition. It actually comes from up north, but it's something that reflects a lot of indigenous like Native North American teachings about wellness, which is that wellness is a balance between your physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional health.
I love that.
Yeah. And so, when we're only focusing on our physical health, right? When we're trying to treat ourselves with pharmaceuticals or, just exercise,
Mhm.
then, you kind of see this medicine wheel that's like this circle with a cross in the middle. And
Yes.
it's these four
Yeah.
quadrants, right? And so we envision that. And if you're putting everything on the physical side of things, it's this movable
Your wheels
kind
on
of balance. Yeah. And so maybe your emotional health or your mental health or your spiritual health are suffering. You're not going to feel well, even if you are working out every day and eating this organic, low carb, paleo, whatever you want to do, diet.
Right.
If you're not taking care of your spiritual health or if your relationships are not healthy, then you are still going to feel like unwell.
Yeah.
And so that's the idea, is that this can be a place where we can explore that together. How do we balance that wheel out? What are all the ways that we can learn to do that, specifically living in the city? Because
Right.
it's so much harder to do when we're here. This is this is like the furthest you can get from the way that our ancestors lived.
Right.
Surrounded by concrete and invasive species and just lawns and parking lots and everybody in their own little
Pollution,
places.
light pollution, all of it.
All of that. So trying to just help people reconnect to things that will make them feel better in a more holistic way.
That's very cool. That's
Thank you.
very, very cool.
It's been
Give me
really
an
rewarding.
example of like a program that you've done here that is like pushing that and bringing it to the community to where they can come and feel some sense of wellness with something you're doing. Like, for example, the other day I saw on your social media that you're looking for volunteers for your introduction of ducks that are coming soon.
Yes. So yeah, that's an upcoming one. We opened the center in September of last year.
Mhm.
And so, we had a couple months where we were able to, do some programming here. And it's been things like cooking workshops.
Okay. Which is huge. I think that.
Yeah. That's my wheelhouse, right? Is like, I'm the resident chef in addition to being the executive director, just like, kind of trying to figure out what all of this is. But my contribution is like the cooking workshops. And we do, one of the ones that we started all the way at the very beginning of the organization in the beginning of 2023 was our Sunday soup groups. And it's like the last Sunday of every month, there's a particular soup that we'll learn. It'll, usually have some kind of traditional indigenous ingredient.
Mm-hmm.
It'll always be something that's healthy and usually made in one pot. We try and keep it like one Dutch oven recipe.
Yeah.
Just something really accessible, something that it's like, that ties to some other aspect of wellness that we want to reintroduce to our lives.
Yeah.
So it's like, maybe this is squash soup from the squash that your neighbor grew.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you didn't grow it, but somebody gifts this to you, or you get
Right.
it at the farmer's market.
Yeah.
That's something that's seasonal that you can save the seeds from it. So we're like making the
Mhm.
soup, but we're learning to save the seeds so that you can plant them next fall, or
Right.
plant them in the spring. And then, you're learning how this entire pumpkin is going to make like either enough soup for like 30 people, or learn to preserve that. So we're going to use part of it for the soup today, and then we're going to process the rest of it and freeze it.
Right.
Or, dry it.
Right.
There's just lots of things that you can build on. And then, maybe we'll learn, a story that goes along with that particular squash, because that's another significant thing about our traditional indigenous foods, is that they all have these stories with them that go all the way back to, like, some of them are tied to our origin stories. So it very much grounds you and like it can fill that spiritual part of you. It can fill the mental part of you because you're learning a new skill.
Right.
It can fill the emotional part of you because, like, stirring a pot of soup and like giving it to someone to help them feel good, that makes you feel good. So it's like, it's just hitting all those marks. And then physically, it's a healthy soup.
Right.
So that's an example of one that we've been doing, and cooking classes, I think, will always be at the heart of this place, because that's just my deal.
Well, and I think cooking and food has been like a cornerstone of preserving culture through like all of time.
Yeah.
Like,
and not just not just for Native people, but like food has such an emotional impact. You store memories with your sense of smell and with that taste. So there's so many different ways that food can heal you. And so that's why it's like, it's at the heart of everything we do here. Like, we'll have movie nights and stuff. Like, we have a movie night coming up at the end of this month, and we're going to watch this new film that's out. It's called Fry Bread, Face and Me.
Yes.
And I actually haven't seen it yet. Everyone I know has already seen it. And I'm like, is it too late to do a movie night with this? Because I've been saving it for myself. But I know, like, all the people that I've talked to that have watched it have already seen it multiple times and have also said, oh, we're coming to movie night too.
Oh, well, that's great.
But, and so it's one that like is great for the whole family. Tells an Indigenous story by an Indigenous filmmaker telling their own story. And then we get to like have fry bread and chili while we watch it together. So
sounds awesome.
Just trying to find any excuse we can to like get people together. And whether it's like sharing a meal, or maybe we just have like some tea and snacks,
Yeah.
The ducks you mentioned. I love that you sent me the agenda of like potential things we would talk about, and it just said like ducks, lol. Because I love to talk about ducks.
Ducks are awesome.
They are amazing. I'm super excited for this spring. We have huge plans, like probably overextending my capacity plans, but we're going to do it anyway, because we're going to like have all of these people to help us. Hopefully.
That's right. You're going to have so many volunteers.
Yeah. So we're kind of putting together like these series of volunteer days as we put projects together. So I've got like this duck house pieces that I have in my office right now in boxes. It's actually like a kid's playhouse that I'm converting into a duck house.
I bet you it'll be perfect.
It's going to be awesome. Yeah. It's like just the right size. It's got like the cute sliding barn door that has like, the Dutch door where it's like opens half and half, but we're going to turn it upside down so that the ducks can walk in on the bottom part. It's going to be cool. So we're like building a little mini patio to be the platform for that on one day. And then we're going to put the duck house together. And so that'll be done this month. And then hopefully in March, we'll have ducklings to put in there.
The little ducklings.
And then that'll just be another kind of example of like urban food sovereignty, which is these, we're all about like reestablishing these relationships with our food and our food sources and the land and the plants and the water. Our ancestors were so very connected. They were immersed. There was no separation between themselves and the plants and the animals and the land. They were completely like one. And us being removed from that has made us sick in a lot of ways, to put it like super simplistically.
Sure.
But any way that we can like reconnect is just a really good example of rebuilding that relationship. And so that was the idea behind these ducks, aside from them being like adorable friends. There's a relationship there where they take care of a lot of the pests that we would have to worry about on the garden. They're going to be taking care of the slugs and the snails
Right.
and all the bugs that are going to be, inevitably attacking the garden.
Mhm.
The ducks take care of that, and we feed the ducks and they feed us with their eggs.
Yes.
And we, and they fertilize everything constantly.
Yep.
They'll be building compost every day with the, hay that we rake out of the duck house. So
Mhm.
all of those things are like this example of how you can build this little ecosystem
Within urban settings.
yeah, within an urban setting.
Yeah.
Like I have had the privilege to get to know Sean Sherman quite well.
Yes.
And one of my favorite things that he says in his talk is he always has this section where he's like, lawns are fucking stupid.
This is true. This is true.
And then everyone goes, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, y'all are cheering, but I know you're going to go home and mow your lawn. Like, rip it out and
Yes.
put in food.
Yes.
Put in pollinators. Like,
I've
put
looked
in some
into-
wilderness.
Yeah, I've looked into this because I've been wanting to do a front yard garden for like a really long time because
Mhm.
our front yard is way larger than our backyard. And our backyard, our dog, that's
Yeah.
like her area, and she makes it very well known that it is hers. And I
Mhm.
have a garden back there that she and I are constantly going back and forth on. She's supposed to stay out of it, but she thinks she's supposed to play in it. And it irritates me beyond any thing I can ever possibly describe to you. So I've always wanted to do it, and I've looked into it, and you have to
Yeah.
have the city of Tulsa requires 6 feet perimeter of around your yard where you cannot go into it for, I guess, purposes of seeing, just like when you're building a fence or something, there's supposed to be, I don't know. That's what I was told.
Sounds dumb.
And also, I agreed.
dumb.
And a friend of mine, she was also doing a front yard garden, and the city came and cited her for it because apparently her garden was too close to the sidewalk.
Interesting.
Yes.
Do I need to?
Yes. The answer to that question is yes.
There's a committee forming in my brain already.
Perfect.
I know just the people to talk to about that.
Yes.
You just give me a few months and I'll take care of it. No,
Take care
I'm
of
just
it.
kidding. Oh my God, that's like just beyond. There's so many obstacles to this. There
I
really
know.
are.
It's just silly.
It's very frustrating.
Mhm.
It can be really overwhelming. And like, I could
It's
kind of
so
hear
easy
that.
to just say, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And move on.
It's just, it feels like a constant fight. And it's interesting. I really loved listening to the last episode and you talking with Trevor, how insightful he was speaking about like just how climate change affects us on so many different levels, and it continues to get worse.
I
And
think
it's like,
specifically the food industry more than
Yeah.
anything. If we
It's
can't
really
grow
difficult.
food, how are we feeding people?
yeah, how are we
So-
going to feed ourselves? And it's a much more like urgent in this lifetime issue than I think a lot of people realize, unless you are in direct, I think as chefs and restaurateurs, we have a more direct line to the food systems than
Mhm.
people just shopping at grocery stores. And we
Mhm.
really see what's happening, and we see the price fluctuations in a lot bigger way. We see the availability changes in a lot bigger way than you do at the grocery store. That's the last place that's always affected.
Yeah.
But we see it on the back end here. And I work a lot with like the Indian Agriculture or the Intertribal Agriculture Council and like the Indian Farm Bill in trying to get more Native people and tribes involved in farming and agriculture because, our ancestral knowledge that we have is the only thing that is going to get us out of the situation that we're in,
Right.
which is that we have created a food system that will not, it won't last. It's not sustainable. It is completely stripping the land of
The
any kind of
nutrients.
resources.
Yes.
And the foods that we're producing are not food.
Right. No, it's not.
They're completely devoid of nutrients. I mean, you can eat, you can eat pounds and pounds of broccoli and you're not actually getting any of the vitamins and minerals that like you think that you're getting
No, not at all.
compared to the way that the diversity of foods that we ate less than 100 years ago, the
Mhm.
quality of foods that our families were eating less than 100 years ago,
Mhm.
the change has been drastic, and the nutritional density is the most like scary underlying thing that is causing all of these health problems, not just in Indian country, but
No,
across
across the
nationwide.
nation. Yes, absolutely.
Everyone is deficient, and people will be like, well, I'm like eating this plant-based diet, and I'm like
Still not feeling
I'm
enough.
shopping at Whole Foods. I'm spending my whole paycheck on
Right.
all of these organic, and it's like, but it's not enough, because even those foods have been engineered for
Processed.
commercial reasons.
Mhm.
And when you commodify something like that, it takes all of the the nutritional value out of it.
Right.
And so that is where we're coming back here and saying, like, let's grow our own, let's grow these ancestral seeds that our ancestors left for us,
Mhm.
because they haven't been,
GMO'd.
yeah, they
they're
haven't
not.
been. And it's really frustrating, because like even when you buy this stuff that's non-GMO, it's still been
Well, yeah, it's been modified over the course of time.
Yeah,
with
just-
being documented. So
just the way that the industry has gone, the capitalism of the food industry has made it so that, like, just like with any product, you want to produce it quicker,
Mhm.
larger, greater quantities,
Mhm.
and so that it costs you less money and you can charge more money for
Right.
it. Like, it's just
Right.
profit driven. And when it's profit driven, everything else goes by the wayside. And so, yeah.
Exactly. I could spend hours talking about this subject
Yes.
because I think that's something that you and I share in common. I am majorly passionate about the agriculture side of growing food and feeding people. And I think it's very important that folks start gardening again. It's crucial.
It's the only way. And we have this concept in Native culture. And I hate to say that in such a blanket way, because there is no like pan-Indian, universal Native culture. But
Sure.
this is a belief that is shared
universally,
across all of these different tribes and cultural backgrounds. And it's this 7 generations concept. And it is the lack of that foresight is why we're in the food situation that we're in today. And getting back to this, perspective on the future is the only way that we can move forward. And that is that every decision that you make today needs to be for 7 generations in the future. So, I know that in my lifetime, am not going to probably fix my own body.
right?
And I'm not going to even fix, my children or grandchildren. But everything that I'm trying to do is so that we have the things in place that 7th generation is going to need.
Right.
And
I love that.
we lost that along the way somewhere, because everyone was thinking about profit in the moment and in that life, in their own lifetime, and not thinking about the repercussions that were going to happen 7 generations down the road. And then
Right.
here we are, and we're like, well, I wish someone had been thinking about me
7 generations
7
ago.
generations ago.
Yeah.
And so that's how we have to move forward, is thinking about agriculture in a way that might not directly benefit us today. It's not going to reverse climate change overnight.
It can't be fixed
but
overnight. Yeah.
No, it took a long time not that long to do this damage. It really hasn't been that long.
Yeah.
But it will take a lot longer to fix it.
Yeah.
There's this really good book that you would love. And it's called The Dorito Effect.
Oh, okay.
It's all about the flavor industry.
Oh.
And about how artificial flavoring and just artificial foods in general have tricked our bodies into
Yes.
believing that they're getting nutrients that they're not getting.
Right. And
causing-
tricked our body to crave these flavors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, it's going to make you really mad. I had to like take breaks from it. It's like infuriating, but it's a lot of really good information.
Okay. Yes. I will definitely. You said it's the Dorito, what?
The Dorito effect.
Dorito effect. Okay. I will look into it for sure. Well, like I said, I could spend forever talking to you about this subject, and I think maybe we need to schedule a coffee date soon so we can carry on. But
I do hang out with people when there aren't microphones.
Oh, do you?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I prefer a microphone. Because like if I'm just talking and I can't go back and listen to it, like why am I even doing it? But I guess we could hang out.
Yeah, we could. I think you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like me a little bit and I like
do.
you. So I think coffee date is in order.
Yeah, absolutely.
I forgot a very crucial thing to ask as part of every episode.
The world needs to know this. I stayed up all night racking my brain
Right.
for my very best tip.
Right. Your pro tip. Tell us, Nico,
This is
what
my
is
pro
it?
tip. And it's hilarious because it's like I'm supposed to be this proponent of healthy indigenous
Mhm.
foods. And I'm like, so butter, guys.
Let's talk butter.
Butter, I always keep a pound of butter in the freezer. And I use it to make like biscuits or pastry dough, dumplings, anything like that, where the recipe calls for you to like cut in the butter or use
Fold
your
it in.
fingers. Yeah, use your fingers to like fold it in or use your fingers to like, crumble the butter in.
Yeah.
Which always warms up the butter
Right.
and you don't end up with flaky as much as you could. What I use is a cheese grater and I take that
Mhm.
frozen butter and I grate it and it's super fast and easy. And then you've got all the butter in these perfect sizes to just toss with your flour.
That's
And
right.
then, add your water, buttermilk, whatever you're going to do. Perfect flaky biscuits.
Perfect flaky biscuit.
And
And don't overwork your dough.
don't overwork the dough.
That's
That
right.
is the other thing is like, when you're working that butter into the flour, you could go too far. You could end up with too big of lumps.
Right.
Lots of margin for error there. But when you grate it in, all you do is like toss it until each little piece of butter is coated in flour.
Right.
And that's it. And then you add your liquid just enough to get it to come together. And you really eliminate a lot of the amount of manhandling that you do on the dough. And it makes for everything to be so much more tender and flaky and rise better and all the things.
That's right. You've
Pro
heard
tip.
it here. Pro tip, Chef Nico.
But butter's bad for you.
Butter's bad for you. Although I will say, like, some butter, if you're getting quality butter,
Mhm.
and, not saying that we just toss it in everything, but I'm saying it can have
Right.
some
I
nutritional
mean,
benefits.
You gotta have biscuits on a Sunday every
That's-
once in a while.
Every once in a while.
Just
right?
gotta live.
Right. And you can't live your life without Eggs Benedict, which requires a lot of butter.
That is
Not
true.
quite the same style and technique of a flaky biscuit. However, it
That's
does require a lot of butter. Okay. That's all the time we have for today's episode. And you know that I am one of your largest fans and I'm always rooting for you.
Thank
I always want to see you do well. I think more women supporting women is crucial. And I want my daughters to know that. And I think
Absolutely.
our friendship is something amazing and I cherish it with everything I have. But tune in, friends, next week, and I will be speaking to another dear friend of mine and getting his perspective of the future of the industry from the front of the house.
Ooh. Who is it?
I can't tell
wonder.
you. Well, I guess we could end it on a note of the butter queen herself and just say bon appetit. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Bon appetit.
Bon appetit.